Hello and welcome back to IT Audit with SK, and welcome to another exciting video where I am going to show you what I did in my earlier years as an auditor to build confidence in auditing infrastructure. And we're going to be looking at Windows, which I think is a simple and good place to start. So I didn't build confidence through a lab or anything elaborate, right? I used what I had available with me, which essentially was my laptop, which runs on a Windows operating system. So through that, I was able to build confidence, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. And it's important because if it's your first time auditing anything, right? One of the things is you want to come across confident when you're conversing with clients. And it can be really daunting, especially if it's your first time. So, these are some of the little tips and tricks that you can do at home in your spare time just to build that little bit of confidence. And in this video, I'll make it pretty simple. I'll cover 3 ways that you can audit Windows, right? I'm just going to touch on a few key areas that you are likely to come across, which will be users, privileged groups, maybe security settings, maybe a little bit of logging and monitoring. So, just a few areas that you're likely to encounter. And I'm going to do this in 3 ways. I'll show you how to manually execute those steps. So, essentially, what I did with my laptop a few years ago, about 10 years ago. And I'm going to show you how to also get the same information through PowerShell, right? And I'll also show you how to create a script using ChatGPT, which is readily available for all of us. And that's essentially 3 ways, right? So we'll go from the least efficient way all the way up to the most efficient way. And through this all, we'll be building the key skills that we need to audit Windows with confidence. Right, with that being said, let us start by perhaps using AI to generate a work plan. I think that's a great place to start. So let's quickly move over to ChatGPT for that. Great, and I'm now on ChatGPT because the first step we're going to do is to create an audit work plan. Of course, there are many other ways that you can get a work plan. If you work in an organization, you might have some templates or work plans already available. You can get some from ISACA, for example, it has some work plans. But if you don't have all those sources, then you can generate your own through all these different Gen AI platforms that we have, right? So I'm going to use ChatGPT, and I have a demo prompt that I already have created just to make it faster and easier. So I'm going to paste it here, create a Windows audit work plan with manual steps and evidence to capture for those 3 areas that we said we'll do. And I'm going to say go. There we go. So there's our work plan. Maybe I should have said put it in Excel, blah, blah, blah. You can always do that and format it the way you want. So this is a really good place to start if you do not know what to even test, right? Someone has just thrown you in the deep end and they've said, go and review Windows. So you don't know where to start. So that's essentially what I have done here. So we've got some steps, which are all interesting steps. So what I'll do now, we'll run a couple of these, and all of these are like manual processes to some degree. So we'll do some of these steps, see what kind of results that we'll get. But I'll also just show you the different areas where you can get the information that we're looking for. So let me quickly split my screen, and then we can do a side by side and see how useful this work plan is. Great, so let's execute the first one. So I'm not going to do all of these steps because I think once we go through the PowerShell, we go through the script, it's all going to become a bit repetitive. But we'll run through a couple of them just so that you get a feel of what I'm talking about. And I also think it's important that I disclaim at this point that this is my personal laptop, right? It's not ideal for you to go and test this out in a client environment. So, really, the key messaging here is that please do test this on your own device, right? Don't go about doing trial and error on a live environment, production environment somewhere. But again, this is just for you to gain that extra bit of confidence. So this is my home laptop. It's a Windows 11 Professional, I think, operating system. So that's what I'm using right now. And I'm using it because you find, whilst it's not exactly the same as a Windows Server platform in an organization, which would obviously be more complex. There's a lot more functionality that they use. It's really a good place to start for you to understand the basics of all these different elements that we're going to look at. So enough waffling. Let's look at the first one. So the manual step, this is for password policy. It says on a domain joint machine. So this is not a domain joint machine, but like I mentioned, it's still Windows, right? So we can still run the same steps to get that. Open Command Prompt as admin. So this is quite key. You'll find, and this is a tip for maybe someone new to infrastructure auditing. A lot of these in real life, right? When you're actually auditing, you would need to execute some of these commands with a privileged or elevated account. So that's why there's a tip to run it as admin, but I don't need to do this again. This is my personal laptop. So let's open Command Prompt. Okay. And I'll just bring it over here. Let's do a split screen. There we go. And I'll just copy that GP result /R and see what it gives us. So this is the kind of like playing around that I'm talking about. So it gives you, you start to not be as scared to tinker about. Yeah. So it's given me some information. It's given me the OS version. Not much else to show again because it's like a standalone workstation. It's my personal laptop, and it's given me some user settings. What's key here? Let's see. The user is part of the following security groups, which would be key. Like if you are looking at a specific account and you want to know what groups they are in, so that could be useful information. Right, and then we also have another command there. So it says net accounts. We're just going to copy that and paste it as well. Let's see what it gives us. So this is giving us some password and lockout settings, again, which would be key. So if I scroll a little bit down in the work plan that ChatGPT generated for us, we can see example evidence to capture. So if you were now doing the audit, maybe you'd grab a screenshot of this and then use it in your evidence, right? And then what else does it say? Expected evidence fields, minimum password length. Do we see minimum password length here? I might just be blind, but I can't see it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's 0, right? Complexity enabled. Can't see it. But there are other ways, and I'm going to show you all those other ways to obtain the same information. And then maximum password age, we've got that. So we have all of that. So yeah, those are some of the things that you can check and look out for. So that was the first test, which I believe was A1, right? So this is what's expected. So if you don't see something, you might then query further to say, how can we see the password age? Because we can't see it from the screenshot. And I'll show you another way to do that or to go about it. And I think actually in the next few steps, I might be able to demonstrate that without leaving the screen, which is fine. The next one is a test for account lockout policy, which is more or less what we already did. If you look at the command, which is net accounts, that was the command that we ran just a few minutes ago. So we're looking at lockout threshold, lockout duration, reset lockout, counter after. So I think we've got a bit of that information, lockout duration, lockout threshold, and so forth, which is great. The next one is on idle timeout, which I'll just skip for the meantime because I think we'll be able to get it anyway in another screenshot. And then another key one. So local users in groups, right? A really important one. We want to know that people, firstly, who need to have access, have the right access, they're in the right groups and so forth. Users disabled and all of that, you check that through local users and privileged groups. So it says here, manual steps, computer management, open computer management. So there are many ways to do it, which is why I love Windows, right? I'll run this in Command Prompt where we are right now, but you can also simply search for it. There we go. It's popped up on another screen. So again, let me put it in this tab, right? So computer management, we've opened it and it says go to local users and groups. There's our users and groups. Then what does it say? Go to users, click on users. So those are the users. Obviously, in a production environment, there will be plenty of accounts, and you may want to get a list or a download of all of those accounts, right? There'll also be a description of what each of the accounts is for, and you'll find the typical administrator account, which is a default built-in account. You'll find guest, again, another typical default account, and so forth, right? So in production, there'll be plenty more accounts, and that's for our users. So it also gives us a tip in our work plan, things to review. So unrecognized accounts, let me see. I do not recognize that default account, right? This is me, but in a live or in a production scenario where you're talking to a client, you may then ask them, identify certain accounts, ask them what are these accounts for, and they may say, I don't know, no one knows. They may say this account was created when another application was installed 50 years ago. No one knows what this account is for. No one knows what the password is for. Those are some of the discussions that you then have with whoever you're auditing. Last login if shown. You won't see it here, but there's a way to do it and there's a way to show it, which I think we'll pick up when we do either the script or when we do the PowerShell command. So we'll probably get it along the line. And then service or local accounts rationale. So you want to know for any service accounts, what are they used for? I think I have one example here. So there's this account, WDA. I don't know what that account is for. A user account managed and used by the system for Windows Defender application guard scenarios. Right. Okay. So that's, you now get an understanding of what the description is for. But if I'm not mistaken, this should be free text. So it's not always enough for you to go just by the description because people can put what they want over there. You really want to get some sense of clarity as to what the account is actually used for, maybe some additional or supporting evidence for that. And whilst we're here, on each of these accounts, you can see the general information. You can see if it's disabled. You can see when they should, what, if their password never expires and so forth, if the account is locked out. You can also see if they're a member of certain groups and profile information as well. I do know on the domain, so if this was a domain, there might be a lot more options other than just the three that we're seeing here, right? So all showing the properties of that one account. Okay, so that's users. And then I would guess the next step might actually be groups. Yep. So according to our work plan, we're now on B2. We're looking at privileged groups. So same steps that I did before, local users, and then we go to groups instead of users. So these are all the groups and we can see them. I think typically, depending on the audit you'll be doing, you'll likely look at the sort of privileged groups or the elevated access groups. So that would be like your administrators, for instance, which I have there, and you can see all the members. And you'd go on to open all the groups that you're interested in. Some of them may be empty, like this one. and so forth. So you see all of those groups. That's again how you would go about finding users and groups. And then let's see, screenshot evidence to capture. So you would capture a screenshot of administrator group membership. If you want an audit trail, maybe the output of net local group administrators. So there was a command line alternative there. So you can always run all of that. But the key thing is to just play around and see what you can get, right? And then the next one would be logging, audit logging. So we're looking at audit policy, event log retention, and so forth. So again, I'll just quickly minimize. Let's minimize this one. Go back to our command prompt and tells us to put in this command. Right. So it looks like there's a privilege I'm supposed to have, but I do not have, which is fine. There are other ways to navigate that. And let's see, Windows security settings, advanced policy, and so, yeah. So I can probably do this manually. Let me search for what we need to do here. So I'm just going to look for Windows tools. Right. So this is really old school. There are probably other faster ways to do it now. So yeah, I'll just show you how to find the same information that we are looking for on this section where we're looking at audit policy. So that's what we're looking at. I'll go to local security policy, and this is the pop-up that will come out. We can see account policies, local policies, and all sorts of information. So we already did the password, so I'll just show you again. This is where you find it under account policies, password policy, the lockout policy that we already looked at again through command prompt. We can also see a screenshot here, same information, just different ways of getting it. And local policies. So we're looking for the audit policy, which we couldn't see through command prompt, but I can actually see it here now under audit policy. Sometimes you may want to see advanced audit policy, maybe depending on the work plan that you're following. So here I can see, like, this is a little bit more detailed. So you'll see account logo and account management, all sorts of different events that will be logged under advanced audit policy configuration. So these are all different areas that you can look at. Sometimes you won't find information under audit policy that you're looking for, but maybe when you go into advanced audit policy configuration, you start to see other levels of auditing that are configured, right? So yeah, that's another example. So that's advanced audit policy, which we couldn't get through command prompt, which is fine. And then I'll also, maybe I'll skip the event viewer, but it's also giving us an additional step to go to event viewer. We'll see more or less the same details that are audited under the audit policy or the advanced audit policy. We'll actually see a log of those events being audited, and those would be under event viewer. So that's what essentially C2 is about. It will also show us maybe how long the logs are retained for and so forth. So that's it. I think earlier on there was a setting that we couldn't get, which was to do with idle session timeout, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm just going to try and find it. So one of the tips I'll give, especially around this, was again under the security options, there are all sorts of different settings that you can also look into. For instance, we can see status of administrator account. We can see it's disabled. The same information we could see under users and groups. We can also see it under security options, policy, and the security setting. We've got guest account status, limit local account use of blank passwords, rename administrator account, rename guest account. So all of those examples. But there's something I'm looking for in particular. Let me see if I can find it. I can see machine inactivity. There's a setting I'm particularly looking for, but I cannot find it. Great, so I had to literally pause the video to look properly, but amount of idle time required before suspending a session. So this one is usually a key one. We do look at this. If you right click on it, view the properties, usually you'd see it like 15 minutes, but sometimes it's 0. And I often find, there are little explain tabs on some of these settings which explain what it actually means. So by default, this policy is not defined, which means the system treats it as 15 minutes for servers and undefined for workstations. So those are some of the little key bits and bobs of information that you need to know. All of this support is also still available on the Microsoft website. So that's another source for you to learn how to navigate all of this. So I think we've covered the key aspects. Let me see if there's anything else worth sharing. Computer management, if you remember from the previous step where we're looking at users and groups, it's also under Windows and Tools. So just another way for you to navigate and get the same information. There we are. Some people look at services. So if you want to see the list of services, it's also right there. So there's really a lot you can do. Maybe you want to look at disk management, all sorts of different tests that you do. So I've just expanded the scope a little bit. But the key thing again is to just experiment. If you have a Windows based operating system on your personal device, then why not take advantage of that and do a little bit of research, do a little bit of experimenting here and there. So that's it, I guess, for the manual process. There are a lot more steps listed here, but what you could probably do is then, depending on the scope of the work that you're doing, tailor the ChatGPT prompt to give you a more tailored work plan aligned with the steps that you want to achieve or the objective of your audit. So that's the manual steps. I'll now then show you how to get the same information, but now through Power Automate. No, not Power Automate. It's because I can see it on my screen, but through PowerShell. So that will be the next part of the video. Great. So now we are going to see what PowerShell can do for us. So I've got a prompt again for ChatGPT. So I've said I'm planning an audit for Windows and I want you to generate PowerShell commands to show the following. So what you could do in maybe practical terms, if you are really preparing for a Windows audit, maybe be specific in terms of the Windows version that you're looking at so that you get it a bit more tailored to what you want. So I've said I want commands for each of the following areas. I've listed them down. I want individual commands. Yeah. So I want to just run a couple of them. I don't want it to produce more or less like a full script that I can run, but I want to just have a feel of some of the commands that it's going to prepare for us. So let's get that running. Here are some PowerShell commands. The first one, maybe you want to know the device name, the Windows version. So copy code, and I already pre-opened PowerShell in the other screen there. So I'll run it. Right, it's getting computer information. There we go. We've got Windows 10 Pro, 2009, the build number, and so forth. So that may be interesting or of interest to you. Maybe if you're testing change management and so forth, you may want to know the version number, the build, and so forth, right? There's also another alternative there. So again, the theme of this whole video, there are many ways to kill a cat, essentially. So there is another alternative, which is according to ChatGPT, it's short and it's clean. So what can we see here? A Yeah, we've got the device name. So this has put it in a table format, so which is pretty handy and useful. That's one. Maybe you want to see updates, patches, hot fixes. There's also another command here. So already you can see we're going a little bit faster than when we were doing the manual scripts, right? So the more confidence you have, the more you're easily able to sort of flex between the manual steps, Power Automate, and all the other different ways that you can get the same information. So we've got our hot fixes there. There's a list of security updates and the dates that they were installed on. Okay. Then there's more detail. You can play around with that one. Another thing, again, you would want to know local accounts. And if you remember from the manual steps, the list is more or less going to be the same, but this is a little bit more detailed. We can see the name, if the account is enabled, the last login, if a password is required, if the password is expired, and the description. So administrator, it's not enabled, there's no last logon. We can't see any password expiry. You can see a description for it. I think there's an account that I disabled recently. Maybe not. But yeah, you can see all the information for all the users on the application or on the operating system, in this case, Windows. So this is a bit more detailed. So you may choose this over the screenshots that we obtained before. That's another alternative way to get the same information. Okay. Then if you want to see only enabled users, there's another prompt, or let's run it, or command. So these are only the enabled ones. So it's taken out all the disabled accounts, which may be useful for your testing. Users in all groups. Again, let's see. There's show groups and their members in a readable format. Maybe you may favor that over the other command. So what is this showing us? It's showing us the group and the accounts in it, administrators, backup operators, and then all of these groups, you can see they're blank, guests. We've got some accounts there, SQL accounts, and so forth. So that's another way to go about it. But I think the thing with Power Automate is, I keep calling it Power Automate. Maybe I should do a video on Power Automate. But the thing with PowerShell is that it's much, much, much more faster. Net accounts we already ran. I'm now looking at password settings, so we won't look at that again. Idle session, we're likely not to get anything. We already saw like it's not configured, so I'll skip that one. Let's just run net accounts again, maybe just to see how it's different from the command prompt and PowerShell. So yeah, it's more or less the same information that we got through command prompt. So there we go. And then that's actually maybe leading into the next video. It says optional all-in-one evidence export. So you just know these prompts, you've used them over and over again. You're confident you can run all of them without any errors. You can essentially bunch all of them together and run a quick all-in-one evidence export. So So it says if you want to dump outputs into files for audit evidence. So what this is going to do is probably export all this information into maybe Excel files. So I've copied the PowerShell and I'm going to run it and paste. So it's going to get all the information that we've already looked at. There we go. And I think it's done. So the path is desktop Windows audit evidence. So it's on my desktop. Let me look for it then. There we go. I've just gone and looked for the folder, which is the desktop Windows audit evidence, which you can see right here. And then for each of the tests, we have an output file. We have A, we have B, we have C, we have the evidence in a file. We've got device info and so forth, which you'll find is the exact same information. It's opened in Notepad. Which you'll find is the exact same information that we already have from performing the manual steps as well as the individual PowerShell commands. So that's what it's looking like. I wanted to see if I could open one or two of these just to demonstrate that it's the same information. Let's see, it's opened on another screen. All right, let me drag it here. Then you can see, I'll just do a quick side by side right there. If you look at the same net accounts information, it's exactly what we have here as well. So really useful, but I guess here the tip would be if the client is going to run this in your absence, then you may want to do some procedures just to ensure they haven't changed any of the information. Maybe they've seen that their password length is 0, and then in the output file, they go and they update it. So you then want to ensure that those files have not been played around with. Like I can quickly show you length and then I change it to 18, for example, and I save the file, right? Yeah, so you want to also do your own procedures just to ensure that none of this information has been changed. So that's essentially PowerShell and how you can also use it to do the exact same thing, build confidence in how you audit Windows infrastructure. I think the next thing, which will be more or less similar to what we just did with the combined PowerShell command, is to maybe run a script. So a complete script. We just plug and play. It extracts the information, which is even faster. So let's quickly jump into that. The last step of the process, I guess, is you could essentially take all those PowerShell prompts, package them into a script, and then just simply execute that script, which will make it much easier to just redo the same process over and over and over again, as we tend to do with audits. So that's exactly what I did. I did package that whole I want to call it Power Automate again, but PowerShell script, I did package it all into an executable file essentially. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like. I will just edit this PowerShell script in Notepad. And I'll just quickly show you what it says. Right, some key information, and this was all included by ChatGPT. I just said combine all of this into an executable file that I can use over and over again. So it's given us what the script collects, right? So it collects OS version, installed updates, local users groups, and so forth. Everything we've already covered. It outputs everything to a single folder, which will be called Desktop Windows Audit Evidence. And there's even a safety note, and there's a lot more you could put on this in practice, but use only on devices you're authorized to test. Obviously, there are risks to running a script like this, especially if you don't understand the code within it, right? So there might be something that may cause that may have an adverse effect on a production instance, for example. So obviously, that's why I'm emphasizing again, over and over again, that please do test this on your own device. But do take the tips and the tricks that you learn and apply them in your day-to-day work. But just do not like do something as risky as running a script like this that has only been output from ChatGPT, and I haven't reviewed this whole thing, but I trust it anyway, and I accept the risk because it's my laptop. But anyway, I digress. So do not paste sensitive outputs into AI tools without sanitizing, right? So this is essentially the PowerShell script, which is good. And I will close this and I'll go back to the folder for the script. I'll just run the BAT file, run, and it's running on another screen. So it's going to do exactly everything that we did already using PowerShell, and that's done. So that's already done. Let me look for the output. And here's the folder. So that took us what, like a minute, which is the benefit of running scripts. So we can see there's a run transcript. So it looks like essentially a log. So obviously it flashed by quickly when the script was executing. But I did see real quick that there were a few instances that failed. So failed to export log, access is denied. So these are some of the things that you then look out for. And I think that's probably because the account that I'm using is not a privileged account or an admin account. So there are limitations as to the information that can be pulled by the script, which again is why it's always important to execute some of these commands as an administrator. So that's the log there. It's showing you, I guess, key information, the runtime. So if you were executing this in a live scenario, then that would be really useful for you to get this log. Then you can sort of double check what the output is. You can double check where the script failed as well. So that's the log or the transcript. And I'll just open a few of these. Again, you will be able to see exactly the same information that's been spooled to Excel here is maybe a little bit more detailed, as you can see. Because I think when we did this in PowerShell, there were a few more columns. This is a little bit more detailed. You get the same information. And the key thing again is there are many ways to get the same information. Users and groups, we can see all local users, same information. Is it enabled, last logon, password, and so forth, right? So that's the output of the script, and it's all been saved neatly into this Windows Audit Evidence folder. So that's it. Those are 3 steps we've covered, and maybe it's a really good time for a recap. We've covered manual steps that you can take to get the same information. We've covered Power Automate, PowerShell, and we have covered a script, which again was a PowerShell script that you can also look at. Like I mentioned, there are many other ways. We even did command prompt. So there are many ways that you can get essentially the same information. But again, the key messaging, and if I can reiterate, do try this on your own local laptop. Please do not try this on a production instance at a client environment. Do try this just to boost yourself in understanding, in confidence, and so forth. And again, another disclaimer, we were using ChatGPT and there could be errors. There could be areas of improvement. You can improve the prompts to be specific to show what exactly you want. So these are all additional considerations. Now that's 3 parts of this video. I also thought it would be good for us to take some of this output and see if test the limits of ChatGPT. So we are going to take sanitized outputs. We are going to upload it into ChatGPT. We're going to ask ChatGPT to create a work paper because I think that's where audit is going. Fortunately or unfortunately, yet to be decided. A lot of automation is probably coming our way. So I'll upload that into ChatGPT. I'll ask it to create a work paper. And then I'll also test the limits of ChatGPT in reviewing the work paper. So be on the lookout for those two sort of top up videos, and let's explore together and see what we find. That wraps up this training. I do hope you found it helpful, and please do forgive my confusion between Power Automate and PowerShell. I will try to edit it out, but I can't guarantee I'll get everything out. But I hope you found this interesting. I am looking to do a lot more demo videos, so do let me know if there's anything that interests you and I can look into that. The same thing I did here, I'll try to do it on Entra. I will try to maybe do more databases as well. But in the meantime, if you also want to grow your knowledge, like I keep emphasizing, then please do find open source software, databases, operating systems, and just explore, build your knowledge, and we'll grow together. So thank you for watching and see you in the next video.